Welcome to ConverSapien, the podcast all about having conversations with interesting Homo sapiens. I am your host and favorite of the species, Caleb Wildman, and I want to thank you for making ConverSapien a part of your day. Two quick announcements before we get into today's episode. Number one, all you members of the Sapien Nation, the Sape Nation, please remember that we are indeed in growth mode right now. I am calling you all to arms. Send a friend a link, post it on social media, talk to someone about one of the episodes you've enjoyed the most, or the next time the word podcast comes up in a conversation with a friend, let them know that you recommend ConverSapien. Word of mouth is honestly one of the best ways we can make this show bigger and better. As always, a shout out to our patrons. If you want to support the show in that way, you can go to patreon.com/ConverSapien or go to ConverSapienPodcast.com and you'll find links to our Patreon page as well as articles derived from our episodes. The second announcement, even though that one was kind of two, starting with episode 7, that's next week, ConverSapien will be moving from Saturdays to Monday release dates. So next week on Saturday, the 29th of August, 2020, if you're listening to this in the future, yes, we're still in the Rona. Crazy times. Wasn't that weird? You remember that? Anyway, there will not be an episode on the 29th of August. Instead, that episode will get pushed to Monday, the 31st, the last day of August. That'll hit all platforms at 8 o'clock in the morning, Central Standard Time. So if you're a morning commuter that goes into work earlier than that, you'll have to catch us in the afternoon on the way home, but we'll be here ready to rock and roll. To summarize, tell a friend about ConverSapien, and we're moving to Mondays starting August 31st. Next week, we have on a paranormal investigator, which is going to be a whole thing in and of itself that I'm very excited about. But let's worry about 1 week at a time. Today's episode is a very special one, and I'm very excited to present it to you. But I need to offer some disclaimers up front before we get into it. The subject of episode 6 is mental illness, and specifically I'll be talking with two people who live with mental illnesses about their experiences. You should know a few things up front. First of all, none of us are medical professionals. I have no training in any official capacity for anything relating to therapy, or even more generally speaking, psychology. And neither do Mandy or Kaci, the two people that will be joining me today. As such, we don't want to make any representation that what we discuss about their experiences should be applied to you or anyone you know. As we say several times in the episode, everyone is different. Consulting a health professional is the most important step towards addressing any mental health issues you may feel you are experiencing, not taking the word of anyone on a podcast. Secondly, I am privileged to have been contacted by both Mandy and Kaci at the onset of creating ConverSapien about doing this very episode. They volunteered to discuss their very personal experiences with mental illness, knowing that they were free to answer or refuse to answer any questions I pose in our conversation as they felt comfortable. Also knowing that some of those questions would be pretty direct and certainly very personal. Neither one wanted to avoid any question I posed, but they knew going in that they had an option to do that, and that I could also edit out any segment they felt unsure about. I say all that to say this was a unique situation where certain barriers may be crossed. I asked them some fairly direct questions about their mental health. These are not questions that I recommend you ask someone unless they are comfortable answering them. It is, in my view, good that society has began to understand and accept discussion about mental illnesses, and having conversations about it is a step in the right direction. All true. But I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that it's universally good to pry into extremely personal issues with others flippantly. Both Kaci and Mandy have exceptional senses of humor, and both like to laugh at themselves in healthy ways. So there are times when we are all laughing while talking about something extremely deadly serious. Please understand that does not mean it's always good to approach discussion of those issues in the very direct and even sometimes humorous ways our conversation plays out. Common sense goes a long way on that one. Lastly, we discussed self-harm, intrusive thoughts, and suicide throughout this episode. Details of a suicidal attempt are shared. The underlying logic of self-harm, according to the people who experienced it, is shared. It is not the logic of someone in a healthy state of mind, and both of them commenting on it make that very clear. If any of those subjects are sensitive for you, you should know up front that they are a major focus of discussion in this episode. If you are experiencing suicidal thoughts of harming yourself, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800 273-8255 or visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. All of that said, I thought today's episode was extremely informative. I was very thankful to have Kaci and Mandy on to talk about their experiences. I'm not going to spoil any of it. I'll let you hear the rest of the episode and hear it directly from their mouths. All of that coming up right after this sensational, bodacious stinger. Stay tuned.
You're listening to
ConverSapien.
I am here with Mandy Barnett and Kaci Parvin. Today we're going to be talking about mental illness and their experiences in the mental health system, I guess you would say. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
We're making
it. I guess we'll just get right into it. So first things first, I'm going to ask you guys individually a little bit about what your own experience is, but we'll start with just diagnosis so that everyone has a frame of reference for what we're talking about. Now, when I say that, obviously everyone has kind of some stigmas, which we're going to talk about, and some ideas of whatever it is you're about to say you've been diagnosed with means that are probably not completely accurate. But first, before we get into that, we have to know what it is. So, Kaci, I'll throw that to you first.
Okay. I have treatment-resistant depression. Meaning that antidepressants will not work for me. So things have to kind of be adjusted to like ECTs, which is something that we might want to talk about later, or ketamine treatments. That's something that's in the works right now. I have generalized anxiety and ADHD as well.
Okay, Mandy.
They were trying, like I started going to a new place and they were trying to kind of roll out some of these, like, you know, to kind of center in and see if it was like overlapping. But
right.
I have depression. I think it was type major. It was either major or chronic. I have inattentive type ADHD. It's really hard for me to like stay focused or, you know, get the drive to do a lot of things. I have bipolar. It was bipolar 2. Now I think it's kind of like a bouncing back and forth. They may be trying to rule that one out. I have borderline personality disorder, which a lot of times people mistake borderline and bipolar. So I think, you know,
right.
A lot of symptoms run together. And I have generalized anxiety disorder as well, and PTSD.
So we got kind of all that out on the table. I'm going to come back to Kaci with the treatment-resistant depression, you said, right?
Yes.
What, I mean, maybe a stupid question.
No.
I was going to say, what is treatment-resistant depression? It sounds like the name probably answers it.
Well, yeah.
But is there anything you would add to that?
Just all that they know right now is non-conventional methods are really the only thing they're going to help you long term.
Okay.
I've been on 5 different antidepressants, 3 mood stabilizers, and several just like anxiety medications. So they change they don't change them very frequently. They give me like a year on them and then they just see it doesn't work. So that's when they decided, let's try something new.
When you're on a new treatment, like let's say they get you on a new antidepressant, a new mood stabilizer to try, can you tell immediately that it's not working, that it's resistant, or does it kind of work at first and then slope off?
That's usually how it happens, but like when I, like the sloping off. But when I get off of one to get onto another, it's a terrible experience. Like the withdrawals that you get from that medication, I mean, you feel like you're going to crawl out of your skin. You don't feel right. And then, you know, they say, give it a few weeks or, you know, whatever. And you're like, oh my God, when is this going to end? When is the few weeks going to end?
Yeah.
Because it's always, you know, it never ends. I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but...
No, you really can't emphasize this enough.
Yeah. Mandy, have you had experience? I see you shaking your head over here. Have you had experiences with withdrawal from, you know, changing medications and things like that?
It's literally one of the easily top 3, top 5 worst things about mental illness to me is change, because nothing's going to work forever. Even if you don't have a medication resistant type, like Kaci has, it's still hitting, it's hitting hard. I've been through a lot of medicines too, and those withdrawals, because it's just firing so many different chemicals, and then you get discouraged really easily. Sometimes it gets hard to take it right, even, because you're like,
right,
what's the point, So I'd like to hear more about some of the other methods you've tried. That sounds really cool to me.
Okay.
Yeah, what are the non-conventional methods that you started to mention?
Well, of course, therapy is always a great one. Find someone that you really trust and that, you believe what they say, and just go and be honest. And I think that's the most important thing about therapy is you've got to find someone and you're like, okay, I can tell you, this embarrassing thing, or, I had intrusive thoughts, or I hurt myself. Like it gets really personal because you tell them everything. So that's the first thing that I would always recommend. The ECTs are like electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
I've been in the mental hospital 3 times. Mm-hmm. The last time I went, before the doctor even met me, he suggested ECTs and got it approved by my insurance. Mm-hmm. Well, at that time, I was like, whoa, I don't even know what the heck this is. I need to talk to my family, So we decided against that. Yeah, we decided against it, at the time. And they put me on a different medicine, and it worked for a while. I changed doctors. I went from, one to the bigger one in Birmingham, UAB.
Yeah.
And they suggested it's a medicine called Spravato. It's a very low dose ketamine, and it's a nasal spray. It's still in clinical trials as the only thing for to use for antidepressant, but it's been cleared with an antidepressant. The clinical trials have seen that when you have this kind of depression, it's not because your brain isn't producing the serotonin. It's because the receptors that pick up their serotonin die.
Oh, wow.
And so the ketamine in very low doses, because, people with special K can get off of it, whatever. That's not how it is. It's a very low dose, but it's been shown to, rebuild those receptors. Wow. And I think that's incredible. If they can pinpoint it to fix it, it's not that we need more. It's just we need somewhere to grab it.
Need it fixed.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
I know they're using, microdosing of psilocybin, magic mushrooms, basically, as another possible treatment that's been studied a lot recently for depression. Have you looked into any of that?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that because I'm just trying to stay within the medical way, I guess.
Right. I'm not saying go.
Right, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I'm not saying go do mushrooms.
I have a really good job, but
right. Next question.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris Melissa. But anyways,
in a medical, they're studying it medically.
No, I think that they're
Arizona.
I think they're trying this
somewhere
first.
Out west.
I'm really looking forward to it. I really, all the positive things they hear about it. They don't know, with ECTs, they know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years out how your body's going to be. You're going to lose all your short-term memory. And that's another reason that I didn't want to do it.
Have you been doing ECT?
No, I had never done ECTs.
No, you're not. Okay.
No, I told them that I was not going to do that.
I was going to say I have when I was doing my undergrad, my English teacher for English 101 had done ECTs. Mm-hmm. I got really interested in it just from her one day talking about her story in class. It's kind of one of those unrelated things. And so I wound up writing one of my papers on it, just like a little research paper on it. And yeah, there's a lot of people with really negative experiences on that. Yeah. And she was one of them. So I was a little like, oh no.
Right, yeah. And
but of course, maybe it works for some people, but it is really scary.
Right.
I have seen a lot of people in my time in the psych units, and they swear by it. They're like, yeah, you might have a little bit of a migraine afterwards, but a lot of people check in regular to get it done, and that's, their primary medication. And
when I was in the hospital, though, there were people there that had been there, for months getting them. And I was like, if it works, why? Are you here?
Why are you still doing it?
Why are you still doing this to yourself? With the ketamine treatment, they give you a month. And if you don't feel better in a month, That's all they're going to do to you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why you would constantly do that, 3 times a week to someone that's not getting any results.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true. Well, one thing about that psilocybin study, and gosh, I'm going to botch it because I didn't actually read it. I just kind of read a summary on it a long time ago. But
Right, guess not.
one thing is that they're finding in some people that it may even cure depression like in one dose, like in some cases, which is mind-blowing to consider. So that's really interesting.
That's exactly what the doctor told me, like the guy that's over all the clinical studies. And he said that some people wake up the next day and they say that it's not as dark. It's not as hard to get up. That's incredible. That is, and even if it's kind of like a placebo kind of thing, like how incredible is that?
If we could reach any technology like that, I mean, we need to pursue it. That's one sort of my qualm with the war on drugs in general, is that it's made it hard to research stuff like that. Like ketamine or anything that's considered like
controlled.
A class 3 drug or any of those class systems. It gets really difficult for even on the medicinal side for people to study the drugs. But hopefully we can move to a place where we can actually start looking at those sorts of things, because it's like, gosh, why wouldn't you want? I mean, if you found out that there was a drug that could cure depression like in one dose, which I mean, that's obviously magic pill thinking, but just the idea of it, why would you not at least pursue some sort of study for it, or something?
Exactly. And I do think that's possible because, I mean, think about just minor infections that they cure with like Z-Packs and stuff now. Stuff like that used to kill people.
Right, exactly. It's like if we've found out, like you're saying, we can use this Z-Pack to cure something that would have set up an infection and killed somebody a couple generations ago. Why is it so outside of the realm of possibility that there may be hopefully some actual cures, not just like symptom treatments for some of these mental illnesses as well?
I've read a lot of studies where, like you said, single dose, it was PTSD. The article
that was
I'm remembering specifically. Yeah, I've read a couple of the research papers on it, and they were doing it with veterans specifically.
Yes.
I think they were offering it to veterans, and there were a lot of people that went in there, and it might have been what people might call a bad trip or something, but they faced their trauma and they faced these things that were just screwing them up so bad, and they handled it. They handled it in like 12, 18 hours, where there's people that, go 18 years, lose their home trying to handle it, just literally lose everything. So, I mean, it could be a magic pill, and I don't think there should be any, I think there should be more funding for it. I don't think there should be as many limitations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Kaci, so you said that the resistant depression, they theorized, is because the receptors of serotonin maybe like die off. Do they have any idea what causes that, or is that just kind of like a working theory for how?
They have no clue.
No clue. Okay.
No, I mean, there's obviously like genetic disposition. Genetics definitely play a role in it, but people haven't been talking about mental illness for very long.
Right.
I mean, my grandparents don't want anything to do with it sometimes.
Right.
And I don't think that I don't mean to say that. They don't understand.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think as time goes on and like we teach our kids that it's okay, and then they teach their kids that it's okay to talk about it, then we'll have a better idea how to treat it.
Well, yeah, I mean you get more of a sample pool of people,
exactly.
When people are honest about their experiences. I'm sure you've had the people who will be like, well, everyone goes through sadness.
Get over it. Your life is so good.
Some family member will tell you like, oh, I was sad. Yeah. I was really sad when I had my first child or something. Everyone has like some way to relate. But it's like, well, can you really relate? Like, is your brain not properly processing the chemical that causes this? Or were you just sad naturally for something and trying to stretch that to fit into this, right? Mandy, you were telling me right before we started that BPD, borderline personality disorder, is probably the diagnosis that you have struggled with the most, right?
Probably generally. PTSD's probably been a really close runner-up. I mean, legit, they've all kicked my ass in one way or another, but I guess there's a lot of triggers that come with those two. BPD, it's really misunderstood. You know, a lot of people, when they hear schizophrenia, they freak out and they're like, oh, that person is just, you know, stereotypical batshit. They don't want anything to do with them. They think they need to be in a straitjacket. It's not like that.
Right.
Usually when they hear it, they've usually met somebody that was really aggressive with it. And that's not always the case. A lot of people are really even afraid to, like, you know, even in mental health groups, they're afraid to bring up BPD because it gets a really bad stigma. I'm generally quiet type. BPD is what they call it. I implode more than explode. Borderline will make you self-sabotage really bad. You'll make very impulsive decisions. A lot of us, like, we have a higher, like, addiction rate and stuff like that. And that's higher in the mental health community because so many people can't get help. So that's how they cope, so on and so forth. But it just makes you make, like, really impulsive, bad decisions a lot of times. You kind of don't analyze them when you're making them. It's really spur of the moment. I think that's another reason it goes with bipolar. You know, it gets confused with bipolar.
When the BPD is being triggered for you, do you ever in the moment like think, oh wow, what's going on? Or is it always afterwards when you realize what's happened?
Sometimes you see yourself doing the train wreck and you're just like, this is gonna be bad, but you just go with it, you know? I mean, you've seen my Facebook, so but yeah,
hey, your Facebook
like,
has
it
great
hits
memes.
Home later. I try. Mental illness comes with
here for the
fantastic
memes
and cats. for I guess
you
the
and James
luckiest of us anyway.
are my like meme source.
Oh, he's gonna be really happy to hear that.
I love those memes.
Thank you.
Tell him for sure because you are the meme lords,
Oh,
at least
yay.
of my sphere.
Well, that made my night.
So I was watching this video of an interview with a girl with BPD, and you say you're the quiet type. She was probably more the loud type, I guess. I don't know if that's an actual term.
Had more of an aggressive, like
yeah, definitely. Kind of like the, you know, like I think sometimes BPD may get associated with this sort of psycho bitch. Like,
yes, definitely.
Vibe,
and
right?
I started to say that earlier and I was like, okay, hang on, maybe I shouldn't, but yeah, I'm glad you said it. Like, legit,
yeah, well, I mean, that's just what people
that stereotype. We definitely do. And I'm the type of person, you know, I talk a lot of shit. I'm very expressive, but I hate confrontation. I really hate it. And the loud type, or whatever you want to call it, from my friends that I've had with it and just my experiences kind of being in the same boat, sort of, it's really a defense mechanism. And like I said, a lot of it is that like self-sabotage thing, which is really subconscious, but you still do it. But another big thing with mental health I kind of wanted to bring up, especially with BPD, we got to have accountability. There's a lot of people out there that, and it's okay to joke about your mental illness, like, you know, don't automatically condemn that chick that's like, LOL, I'm having a crazy day. Because that's, you know, that really might just be how she's coping. You know, you don't know what's going on in her head. But you have to unlearn your toxic behaviors. And that's part of therapy. And that's part of healing. And that's part of dealing with your illness. And that's part of getting better.
I'm glad you brought that up because this kind of segues into something I wanted to run by both of you. So mental illness obviously has been a taboo subject for a long time. But then maybe over the last 10 years or so on the internet, it's maybe less of a taboo subject. And in some ways, I have wondered, and I don't want to sound like a judgmental prick because I kind of sit on the outside of this a little bit, but I have wondered sometimes if maybe what Mandy was alluding to here, if there's some part of the internet embracing of mental health issues that crosses a point where it's like, oh, that's just my depression, LOL, and people are kind of self-diagnosing with BuzzFeed quizzes and stuff. Have you come across that? Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Like,
do you guys ever feel like when you look at like Reddit or something that people are? It's like statistically, can all these people who say that they have
and ran with that shit?
Yeah, yeah. It's like
it kind of ruined the characters, man. Like that girl, like reading her comics helped me get over abusive relationships, and now I look like a stereotypical kind of want to be crazy girl. So yeah, I definitely think that people put it up on a pedestal and a lot of people don't really understand it and they jump on the bandwagon without getting diagnosed, without going through a lot of god-awful trial and errors. I know Casey's gone through them. I mean, anybody that really has this stuff's gone through a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of gray area in this because a lot of people are afraid to be treated. A lot of people don't want to get put on a million medications and get taken advantage of. Like a lot of people have trust issues. They're afraid of stuff. A lot of people can't afford it, but accountability is still so important. And I don't have much for a lot of times when I see people truly just being like, it's okay that I did this because I have bipolar. It does piss me off. It's one thing to joke about it, but to actually say that or heavily imply it and deny all accountability, it makes me sick because I've had to learn accountability for a lot of my shit.
I think that in some ways, I don't really think I've ever felt like that, but I think it's because I love to make fun of myself before someone else can make fun of me. Self-deprecating humor is my specialty. If I find a TikTok that like really makes me laugh about mental illness, I'll show it to my friends, and there's been so many that are like, wait, that's not normal. And then like they start talking to me like, hey, this is how I really feel. And I'm like, wow, well, it's a good thing that this stuff is kind of spreading around. I mean, I know that, that there are bad ones out there, but I think that talking about it, good or bad, is getting people to talk about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And getting people to think about it.
No, you have a good point there. I just wondered before if some of the self-diagnosing that I've seen, this is particularly on Reddit. Reddit is like a rabbit hole of people with self-diagnosed depression.
I feel like a lot of those people are probably young kids, like they're probably like 12 and stuff. And really, like Kaci said, like, yeah, a lot of the baggage from the internet is annoying, but like really it is more important that it's talked about than to shun people about it, and I really hope I didn't come off like that to anybody that like, I don't want to make anybody afraid to talk about it, but at the same time, when you're saying stuff, be considerate to your friends that have like, had to spend a month or, any time, in a psych unit that saw something really horrible, and you try to think of, be like, am I being a little light with it? Dark humor is great, but, I mean, I love dark humor. It's definitely my shit, but the self-diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly. That one made me want to bring it up is that I've wondered, like, both of you have had hospitalization experiences, right? Both of you are dealing with this. It's a major part of that affects your life. When people have taken what is essentially the equivalent of a BuzzFeed quiz online and then say that they have these things, that's when I'm like, okay, but do you?
Self-educate. It's important, but don't take it too lightly because it's very serious. You wouldn't joke about having cancer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you probably wouldn't be like, oh, I took a quiz that had 10 questions. Never talked to a medical professional. And I'm pretty sure that I have cancer now.
Yeah, I know that's like a really drastic way to put it to some people, but
no, it's really not.
It's a serious disease. They're serious. People die from this shit every day.
It can kill you either way. Like,
exactly.
Depression is just as serious and something that needs to be taken care of, just as if you cut your foot off. And sometimes that's something needs to be done just as fast in both those situations.
You're right.
Yeah. And so I don't think that that's wrong at all to say that it's just as bad as any other disease, because it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be deadlier than some cases of cancer. Granted, some cancer is deadlier than some cases of mental illness, obviously, but...
Yeah, and I think that's something, when you talk about dying from depression, that's something that we, as a culture, have just, in my mind, at least from my experience, or what I think I'm seeing in the world, we have just started to sort of use that language or understand what that means over the last, 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
In the past, when someone committed suicide, it was like, well, they committed suicide, but that's a separate thing, right?
Yeah, people had a lot of the they gave up attitude.
Yes,
a few
I think we're
years
sort
ago,
of becoming aware now that people that are in a normal state of mind typically do not kill themselves. Like people who are not experiencing these, I mean, I guess some do, but generally you're already in in that state.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of the cases, like where people are like, "Oh, they were so happy." A lot of us are happy. You know, we want to be happy, so we try to be happy. So a lot of times stuff gets overlooked. You know, Robin Williams, for example. You know, nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about my suicide attempt?
Yeah, if you are comfortable, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want you to talk about anything and everything that you're comfortable talking about.
Okay, I think I need to tell it. I think I need to tell
Yeah, please do.
it. Okay. So last September, I was with my ex and things were awful, just not good for either one of us. We had gotten into an argument. I don't remember about what. We argued about everything. So I started off by just self-harm, cutting my legs. Didn't tell anyone. Then this night, I had just like anti-anxiety pills, just like a big bottle of them. And there were about 70 in there. So I took them all. And I was just like, I'm just going to go to sleep. I'm just going to, I can't do it anymore. And instead of sleeping, I hallucinated for probably about 48 hours.
Wow.
And it was the weekend, so I didn't sleep. I felt like things were touching me, grabbing me. It was the closest thing I could think to like possession, and I know that sounds wild.
Yeah.
But like I was just like, this is not me. This is not my body. Like this is not, this is not right.
Yeah.
So finally, he didn't call anyone. I told him not to call anyone, so he just played video games. And then I went, like, once I was good,
X is a key word in this.
You're exactly right. So I got as best as I could for work, not even after, like, I was like just done. I was like, okay, I'm done hallucinating, time to go to work. Because that's literally, I'm not kidding. But at the time, I was a personal chef, and I was like, my client has got to eat, so like I gotta go to work.
That's that anxiety disorder of yours.
that I've got to please people. I'm a people pleaser.
I can't fail.
Anything you need, I have you. But I'm probably not in a good headspace. Anytime. I didn't go to the hospital. I was just like, I'm just gonna deal with this on my own, which is never a good idea. But I moved out of my ex's house, and that was like probably 3 or 4 days between that and, okay, I gotta go. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So that was like me taking charge. But let me tell you, when those like when you're like, okay, you finally have the courage to do it with anything with anxiety, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great and everything's going to be okay. And then when it's done, you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? Could there have been a different way I could have handled this? What did I do wrong? It's never, it's, what they did or, like reasons of other things. It's always, the blame is always on yourself. And that is exhausting.
Yes.
I can imagine.
I take blame for something I have no control over. Like, if something a package isn't delivered at work, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, how is that my fault? I do not work for UPS.
Right.
Same.
No, that's not your fault at all.
But I still do that every day.
When you were in your own hospitalization experience, how did that come about?
The first time, I felt very suicidal. Yeah. I was in a job that I hated. It was so much pressure. I was executive pastry chef, and it was a lot. It was just, I was there about a week, and when I left out, it was almost like a reset. Like, wow. But it also made me like, why do I feel so bad? These people have, more serious mental illnesses than me, or, they're going to be here for much longer than me, and I'm just going to go back to work in 2 days right after getting out of the hospital.
Right.
But then, I've quit invalidating my feelings, and that's a huge thing that you've got to do whenever you have mental illness. Like, well, they might have something, but your illness is just as much in your world, like you see them not able to do, certain things, but in your mind, you can't do certain things either.
Right.
So the first time was great. The second time I stayed overnight, and I went to a partial hospitalization program. So I went for 2 weeks, and I went Monday through Friday. It was like class, like 8 to 4. And
that's pretty cool.
It taught a lot of they don't have it anymore, of course.
Of course.
They quit funding for it. But anyways.
Whole other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that for 2 weeks. I met amazing people. I have friends that I met there that I still talk to every single day.
Yeah.
It was great. And then the last time I went to my psychiatrist, and she was like, "How you feeling?" I said, "Well, if I tell you, you're going to put me in the hospital." I said, "I really don't want to go."
A lot of paranoia comes in with the therapist stuff. Like, you're like, okay, where's the line? There was a meme about that. It was like trying to find the line where I'm honest, but I don't get involuntary hospitalized.
Yes. So then that time, that was the worst experience for me. And that's why I switched doctors. But I was there for about a week, and there were some great people, but there's such little funding that, like, where I went, there was no individual therapy. It was all group. And, like, you can say, like, no one's going to say anything or, whatever, but that you still don't want to open up.
Yeah, with these
to
strangers.
people that, exactly. Like, you can't, you don't trust the people that you've met for 12 hours.
Right.
I found myself playing doctor a lot. Like, one time a nurse called me on it. She was like, "All right, you're like helping everybody, but like, what the hell's up with you?" And I was like, "Well, I look
Why are
pretty
you
happy,
here?"
but I'm not." And she was like, "Yeah, I know."
So for people who maybe are listening to this and have never, been hospitalized for anything related to mental health, if I'm not mistaken, the fastest way to get there is through like suicidal ideation, more or less, right?
Straight through
so
the
if you indicate that you're having suicidal thoughts, intrusive thoughts about suicide, you're gonna probably wind up in the hospital, right? Is that right?
Yeah, and if you have thoughts of hurting others too.
Of hurting others, okay.
Hallucinations help.
Hallucinations help.
Yeah. Like really,
it's like confetti.
Yeah, like literally my depression diagnosis, I think it was like major depression, and I think the way the psychiatrist put it at the time was like with a hint of psychosis, and I was like, that sounds artisanal, But I hear things, like a lot of times it's like hearing names and stuff, but like when my depression would get really bad, I'd hear a lot of intrusive. It's a difference from intrusive thoughts. It's because that's more like, to me, it feels more like you're sitting there kind of having a conversation with yourself. This is, stuff that comes from nowhere, and you can hear it. You'll kind of look around and be like, did somebody call me?
When you experience that, did those thoughts that are kind of feel like they're coming from the outside, they say anything specific or just like your name, or what is that? What was that like?
Normally, it would just be my name. Like most of the time, not even anything really threatening. Usually somebody's voice you can like almost recognize or something like that. It'll sound like your mom's voice or somebody you talk to all the time, something like that. Sometimes they're just really abusive. Like they'll cut you down. They'll and it's different for everybody, and I mean, I've heard some that weren't bad at all, like I said, but a lot of it probably stems from like the PTSD and anxiety, I guess. Like, it's really hard to pinpoint, like I said, where like one mental illness begins and another ends if you have like more than one of them, because like a lot of the symptoms flow. So many of them flow. So
when that happens, it's like, it feels like you're literally hearing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as opposed to like an internal thought.
Yeah,
like it feels like it's out here.
Sometimes I don't know. I know a lot of the people listening to this have. I mean, shit, it's pretty big, but if anybody remembers Lolly off of Orange is the New Black, she would hear things. And it would be very similar. They depicted that fantastically, honestly. And you know how when it showed her flashback, she would like ring a bell or something? Stuff like that honestly helps. Like when you see people talk to themselves a lot, I may like mumble something to myself, or, you know, you might hear me be like, oh my God, that was so dumb, you know, like having like a flashback or something. And it really does help when you have panic attacks too. If you locate senses, if you make yourself hear something, and if you make yourself concentrate and really see something, see the texture, see the color. If you touch something, really feel how it feels, you know. It's called grounding, I think. And if you don't have if you don't have like a Klonopin or something that you can take, a lot of doctors are really strict about that stuff, you know. Yeah. I mean, like if you don't have an emergency medicine, like a lot of people need,
controlled.
Yes, they're very, very controlled.
Locked down.
Yeah. If you're under 18 and your parents have good insurance, they're real happy to give them to you. But seems like once you're over 18, they get real stingy.
When were you first diagnosed with a mental illness, Mandy? Or how did your journey, like what age were you, and what was the first thing that was found out about that, or the first diagnosis you received?
Well, we moved when I was like 8, and it was really traumatic for me. My personality kind of changed a lot. You know, I used to be really outgoing and stuff in school, and then when we moved, I got really quiet, really shy. I got really reclusive. You know, once somebody would talk to me, I'd be extra weird. But that was, I cried a lot more than most 8-year-old kids would. Most of them be out playing, and I did that stuff, but I had a lot of days where I'd cry a lot. As time went on, fast forward to being 14, 15. I knew I had problems. I'd been self-harming. I'd been cutting a lot. People started to notice, burns and marks on my arms. So I quit messing with it there and went to my legs, like Kaci was saying. I started to get more paranoid. Another thing she mentioned earlier, mental health has just recently become okay. My dad, he was older. He just passed away recently, and he was 73. He was about to be 74. So, he's older. My mom, I believe she's in her mid-50s, so me and my mom actually kind of learned a lot of stuff together. They didn't know what to do at first, because to the untrained eye, it just looks like you're being a jackass a lot of times, which is why accountability is important. Even if you don't mean to do it, go back and be like, I'm really sorry I put you through that. But, I was self-harming so bad. I was always kind of, I was pretty out there and weird. Anyway, so, a lot of that kind of ran together with them. And, but I was really outspoken to them about it, and they saw how bad it got. I started to have problems with drinking. I talked to them, and I started to get into like outpatient treatment, seeing a doctor and a therapist or whatever.
Right.
And the first time I was hospitalized, I believe I was 15 or 16. I started getting medication, help, therapy, the usual beginnings of it or whatever, when I was 14 or 15. Then I was 15 or 16 was the first time I was hospitalized. And I had kind of like a spaced out moment. I was freaking out about something. It was almost out of body. It was like it was definitely like an anxiety attack from the way I'm remembering it, but I spaced out, and I had basically doubled my prescription of Zoloft. It wasn't like a trying to get high thing or anything like that. I mean, Zoloft ain't gonna get you high. I got really sick, like, I didn't mess with anything back then, I would just get a hold of alcohol when I could. And my dad woke up. I was puking so hard all the way across the house. And I went to the ER. They pumped my stomach, and I ended up in the psych unit. I'm glad it happened. I mean, I got my medicine right, and sometimes just going to the doctor isn't enough. Sometimes a lot of people with long-term do need to go in if medicine does help them. Not for everybody. Like she said, medicine does not help everyone. But if it does help you, sometimes it's really important just to be like, okay, this is going on. Like, y'all should probably like adjust this, if you feel like something's not right with your medicine, maybe they need to be able to monitor you for just a couple of days to set it right.
So I was going to ask about therapy for both of you. Specifically, I was curious, and I don't want to get into anything, too personal that you wouldn't want to share. This is all obviously you're up to you. But some people, when they start getting treatment, maybe they start doing cognitive behavioral therapy, they can address particular thought patterns, and that works really well for them. Other people maybe do that and also take a antidepressant, and the chemical, they maybe in their own mind think of it as purely chemical, and that works really well for them. And then other people will also trace their problems to like a root trauma or something like that. And then a lot of people are probably a mix of kind of all those things, right? But I was curious if you ever had in therapy a big aha moment that you can remember where you were like, this is at the root of what's going on here. And again, that's kind of a personal question. I don't want to make you do therapy. So if you don't want to recount, if you do have that experiment and you don't want to recount it, but I was just curious if that's something that you could say, yes, that did happen, or no for you.
Yes, and I will tell you about it. Okay. So I grew up without my dad. I know who my dad is. My parents were married when I was born, but then they got a divorce when I was really young. He's not good. He's, and I grew up knowing that. I grew up growing, knew the truth.
I'm sure it doesn't make it easier though.
And well, I thought that in my head, like growing up, like, oh, I have my granddaddy's wonderful. He's been a father figure to me. I don't need another father figure. He's perfect, Right. And then I would remember like growing up, like kids with their dads and stuff, and I would just be like, oh, I have granddaddy. I would always just say, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
But now that I've gotten older, abandonment issues are very real. And you don't even think about it. Like if someone asks me about him, I just say like, oh, wow, I don't know. And then just kind of, move along. I don't think about it. I don't think I think about it as much as I do, apparently.
Yeah. But it's in the back.
But yes, it's always in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got a divorce when I was 24.
I think a lot of bad decisions come with a lot of mental illness, like because we cut ourselves down and we don't think we deserve things we deserve. I mentioned
You're
earlier,
exactly right,
like that's a
though.
big
Yes.
thing with BPD, the self-sabotage.
Yes.
But any symptom I bring up for any of my illnesses, I can almost swear will flow right into any other mental illness you talk about. Like it's going to be at least a light symptom or a side effect from the medicine for it.
Do you have from therapy, Mandy, a moment like Kaci was talking about, like an aha moment that you would want to share?
I had moments I felt validated, and I'm sure I had a couple of aha moments, but really I've had a lot more of those kind of just, talking to friends. Maybe having a drink, something like that. Just actually giving myself some alone time. When you actually do get those moments and you got a moment to kind of just sit there. And I was looking at some art I did the other night when I was a kid. And I had a lot of moments like that, Therapy is very personal, but it's also a business, like I said. And being honest with your therapist and your doctor is important. Earlier I was talking about like, so many people are afraid to talk to them. I've gotten that way. I've been put on a lot of medicine that I did not need to be put on. So I'm very picky about what medicine I take. And I've had them kind of try to push that. So, it kind of makes you lose trust when whether it's beneficial or not, if you're not comfortable with something, you're not comfortable with it. I've had a great therapist, and she worked at like Blount County Mental Health. Like this woman was not getting the paycheck people at higher end offices are. I had a lot of really great moments with her, and she was probably the first doctor that really, really, really made me feel validated and made me feel like it was okay to feel those emotions. So that's the big aha for therapy moment for me, I'd say.
You both brought up self-harm as a part of your own journeys. I'm curious, because the world is curious. What's the feeling that drives one to that, if you can describe it, what it does? Kaci, go ahead.
For me, it's like I have so many emotions and I don't know how to express them.
Yeah.
And it feels so overwhelming that it becomes almost like a numb feeling. And then you just want to feel something. And I know that might sound kind of weird, but you want to get your mind off of your emotional pain and your mental pain.
Yeah.
So you want to feel the actual pain of, doing whatever you're going to do to hurt yourself. But it's like, just as fast as you feel like relief from that, you feel guilt. Like, oh, great. Like, why did I do this to myself? How am I going to cover this up? What are people going to think?
I don't want them to worry about me. My boyfriend's going to be upset.
Right.
What if a teacher sees this? All kinds of shit.
Well, and the thing that people always say is that, what's her face, that teenage girl or boy, they're just doing that for attention, right? That's the thing that you hear. But then what you're saying right now is you're more concerned about covering it up and not drawing attention to it, right?
Yes.
So really that's not the motivation at all. Right.
It's a very secretive, taboo thing to do. And, you don't do it in front of people and you don't tell someone you're going to do it or,
Right.
I've never threatened to do it. I've just done it. Didn't tell anyone until they see it.
Do you feel the same sort of thing, Mandy, that kind of identify with what she's saying?
Now,
about expressing
definitely.
That like physical pain, I guess?
Definitely. It helps you manifest it. Scientifically, it releases endorphins. Your body, when you get like when you get hurt physically, your body will release endorphins. Think about like if you get bit by a mosquito and you scratch it, it feels better,
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a sense of control. A lot of people disassociate. And my disassociation isn't exactly... I don't disassociate and self-harm really anymore. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen again because, the future is fallible and, it's okay to have mistakes. I'm not aiming to do, self-harm again or anything, but I guess I'm saying if I do, I forgive myself in the future.
Does it kind of like ground you to the
it's very grounding. That's a great way to put it. That is an awesome way to put it.
But then you realize it hurts.
Yeah. Really, the healing is so much worse than
and
doing
you're like,
it.
What?
Like the healing is such a bitch. All kinds of different things will go through your head because you're not thinking quite rational. A lot of times if you're disassociating, you don't feel like you can feel anything. Sometimes you'll do stuff like that just to feel something.
When you say disassociative, is that like a feeling of being outside of yourself?
Kind of. It's like the ultimate zone out. Like you won't realize a lot of things that are happening to you.
I think things are in slow motion.
Yeah.
I feel like things are more like you're doing like things impulsively, but you don't feel like you are.
Yeah, it's like a really weird autopilot.
Yeah.
Like when you're driving and you zone out, you're like, how did I get here? It's just like that. And I hate driving. Driving scares the shit out of me.
I wrecked 2 cars in 1 month. I totaled 2 vehicles.
Wow.
I'm scared of driving.
And were you feeling like dissociative during that time? Like when would you
the
say
first
that
time?
caused
Well,
it?
yeah, the first time I did, and then the second time I hydroplaned.
Oh, that scares me.
Well,
But still, that was a crazy experience, and that's when I got on ADHD medication.
Both of you said you had ADHD, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
How does that? What is that? What is ADHD?
Bouncy balls.
You can't focus on anything. Yes. It got to the point where I couldn't watch a 30-minute episode of a TV show.
Wow.
Yeah, even if it's your favorite.
I couldn't just sit and watch it. And like I would start doing something and I would think, oh, I need to go do this. Or I need to go, like, I was doing a lot of things all at one time and then nothing ever got done.
Yeah.
And then that would make me feel like I was procrastinating. Like I would get really frustrated with myself because I was like, why can't I just finish a task? Or, like doing something at work, why can't I finish the schedule? Or why can't I, order this or that? I just couldn't just sit down and focus on anything.
You literally cannot make yourself do anything you are not super driven and know how to do mentally right at that time. You have to be completely in the zone sometimes.
You have to constantly have something else to look at.
Yeah, it's like you like when you're tired, like when a commercial comes on and you're watching something on TV, you usually have that backup channel. It's like having
you
a bunch
on your
of backup
phone or
channels
something.
Yeah,
It's like
you're,
constant
Yeah.
backup channels for everything.
you zone out all the time and you
A
don't
lot
even
of
mean
tabs
to.
are open.
Yeah,
So
you
many
got 50
tabs.
tabs open.
I have a question.
Go for it, for sure.
How is your family with support?
They are fantastic now. Like I said, my mother kind of went through the ringer when I did. I was a teenager, and she was like starting to go through, the big mom change. So you can imagine the nightmare that was. I was one of those kids that grew up thinking my mom, when I was a teenager, not when I was like little, me and her just clashed so bad when I was a teenager. Like we were always at each other's throats. Like I was pretty sure I'd move out and probably not talk to her, very rarely. And now I'm so glad I got my mom. A lot of that, I realized was just teenage hormones, and a lot of it was her going through her changes and her hormones. And both of us were getting hit by mental illness kind of hard at the same time. She's awesome. She's my hero, and she's super supportive. I mean, both of my parents, before my daddy died, he was really supportive. He maybe didn't understand it as well. I have siblings. A lot of my siblings have, some similar stuff. They've been really supportive, but it's also really hard, even if you have mental illness, to watch your family go through it. It doesn't make it any easier knowing you haven't. It runs so hard in genetics, both ends of my family. There's stuff there. So I've gotten a lot of support. I really can't complain much.
Good.
How has yours come around?
Okay, so at first they were just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Your life is great. You went to culinary school. That's exactly what you want to do. You have this great job. At the time I was married, and I was just like, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like I should feel, because I knew things were going wrong in my marriage. And when we split up is when I first started taking an antidepressant. I think now that they see, like, okay, I've been through several stages of my life of, married, divorced, single, dating again, blah, 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 and I'm never happy.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that one, that one time where people go through a hard time when they're going through a divorce or a breakup. That's expected. I think them seeing like, oh, well, this is not just like a season thing, like season in my life. The last time I was in the hospital, I think everyone was like, okay, this is real. And they've really come around. I can call them and say, look, I'm not doing great. And they'll say, look, well, I don't understand, but I love you. And that is so much better to me than trying to say like, whoa, I'm sad because blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Because you just feel
they didn't have
stupid
the
when
Doc
you're
Coke
like,
I wanted. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like, don't compare that. I have a boyfriend that understands what's going on too, and that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Instead of him just being like, whoa, get over that, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure people think sometimes, but it's nice when he's just like, I just know that this is part of the package.
Right.
So, this is take it or leave it. That's her.
I have a lot of that with Robbie too, and he grew up down the road from me, so like he already knows I'm crazy. I know he is too. But he's really been very supportive, and he's learned. When you care about somebody that has this kind of shit, you learn to be patient. I've had to learn to be patient with my friends, because everyone's different. I cannot stress it enough.
My boyfriend's a bouncer, and he has to kick out drunk people, so I think that's how he has a lot of patience with me, so I think that's where he learned it from, dealing with.
You think he learned it from
people.
drunks?
Right, he's used to the lack of
screaming.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
After my Nana died, I had a lot of, dealing with death is of course shitty for anyone, but okay, so I don't know if y'all know, but my boyfriend's actually just my backup, and I'm actually married to Ewan McGregor. And I would watch Big Fish, and like I knew what was going to happen, but I would watch this movie, and I just be all right. So I'm an emotional dumpster. I think I'm going to watch this movie, and by the time it gets to the end of it, I'm just like screaming, crying. Nasty, ugly, snotty.
When you're sad, you want to surround yourself. Misery loves company.
Right, and like sometimes I'll be totally fine, but like I'll know, and I'm just like, I need to lose my shit.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor, I'm coming.
I think if you watch things over and over like that, it also helps with your anxiety. Like, you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no,
You're prepared for the
shockers.
trauma.
There's no surprise.
Yeah, you're prepared for all of it, and that's more calming than going to the movie theater and watching a new movie, you know?
Like my ex-boyfriend, I legit remember him being like, Jesus, Mandy, you need to pull it together. It's like, fuck you, you know, this is what I'm doing. I'm watching this and crying like a bitch to pull this together. You know, it's very important to have supportive people around you. Don't waste your time being around somebody that's a piece of shit that's going to abuse you. It makes all the difference to have support.
One of the ways that we cope is like, I'll be like, okay, it's been 3 days since I've cried. And we'll be like, yay. Have like a little party.
Small victories.
I haven't made a week yet, but I'm getting closer.
I'm usually that person, like, pride myself on, like, not crying. You know, just feeling like it's not okay to show that emotion and stuff.
My therapist always makes a point to tell me there's a brand new box of tissue on the table.
I mean, it's better to go ahead and get it out.
Well, but I mean, crying is a natural thing that people do, right? Especially if you're experiencing something. If you're experiencing mental illness, that only exacerbates it. But it's a normal thing.
But I don't want to be sensitive. I want to be rough.
No, because I will talk crap about anyone anytime to their face, but if they say anything to me,
same.
Don't. Because I will break down.
I'll compartmentalize it. I'll sit there and analyze it and be like, well, if I hadn't done this when I was 8 on January 22nd, maybe I wouldn't be such a weak bitch.
Yes.
Like, I will overanalyze it.
Yes.
Because I want to fix it. I don't want to make anyone unhappy. I know what
I
it's
don't
like
want anyone to be mad at me.
Yeah.
Oh, I
You're
can't
right.
stand it.
To kind of close, I wanted to ask you guys if you had any advice to give someone. You know, you both kind of just talked about advice for people who are the support structure, sort of indirectly by describing how your own support structures have come to be. Do you have any advice to someone who is going through mental illness and feels alone and doesn't really know where to go from there? I'll start with you, Kaci, and then Mandy, and then we'll wrap it up.
I suggest just talking to someone really close to you.
Yeah.
You don't ever know what someone is going through.
Mm-hmm.
You might find someone that, you know, you talk to and say, hey, I don't really know what's going on with me. And they're like, whoa, me too. I don't know what's going on either. And you find those little connections because everyone struggles. Everyone has their own struggles, whether they last their whole life or, you know, just periods of time. Everyone feels sad. Everyone feels disappointed or, you know, all the negative feelings. And it's just nice to hear like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one with the, you know, the rainy cloud over my head today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Abilify commercial.
I didn't even think about that. But I am on Abilify.
Thanks. It worked really good for me
Shout out
for
to
years.
the sponsors of Abilify.
But that's what I would suggest first. I'm super close to my mom. So she was one of the first people I was like, Mom, I don't feel right. You know, I'm just really sad all the time. So, you know, if you're really close to one of your parents or whatever, there's also like hotlines you can call if you don't feel comfortable talking to anybody that you know. A lot of therapist offices. Therapist offices take insurance, and most of the time the copay is completely free. There's also an organization called NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. The Birmingham chapter meets at UAB, the psych area. That is completely free to go to. You can, of course, like pay to be a member and like, you know, get all the updates or whatever. You can just go to those meetings yourself. There's sometimes where you can bring family or whatever. There's the Amelia Center. That's for grieving families. That's free therapy. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that, you know, that you can reach out to people, you know, churches, you know, anywhere that you feel comfortable saying, hey, this is what's going on in my head and I don't think it's normal.
Mandy, what's your advice?
What has helped me a lot, I have a kind of an obsessive personality. Fandom, man. If you can just drown yourself in something, like go watch Avatar, go binge that shit, go play Assassin's Creed, go play Final Fantasy. And another thing, my animals. helped me so much. A lot of people, that could be botany, a hobby really. And I say that kind of lightly because you lose interest in your hobbies. I mean, even if you're just like re-binging a show you used to like when you were a kid or something, do it, if it can get your head somewhere else. Fandom, my animals, and, I guess you shouldn't go overboard on anything, but religion helps a lot of people. I used to have a lot of problems with religion. It helps me a lot now. I'm actually kind of looking into becoming a high priestess. Don't push it, whatever you do, don't push it on people because that's mad annoying and it's toxic. Yeah. Anything that makes you feel better as long as it's not hurting you or hurting someone else. But reaching out is important. But if you feel super alone and don't feel like you can reach out, those are a few things you can do.
Right. Well, I have my best friend. She lives in New Orleans. And so I don't get to see her, hardly ever, especially with Corona. And I know that I can call her anytime, and she'll know exactly how I feel and what I'm going through. So you've got to surround yourself with people that lift you up and don't tear you down, because that will make your situation 1,000 times worse. If you're already in a low point and you surround yourself with people, then that's never going to end well.
For sure. But at the same time, you don't want somebody that's going to enable you to totally just make a bunch of bad decisions. You want somebody that's going to maybe sugarcoat it a little bit, I guess, if it's a hard truth or something. But you want people around that are going to be honest and, really be supportive and not just tell you what you want to hear.
Well, thank you both for coming on to my lovely podcast.
Spacecast.
Thanks for discussing this stuff, the Spacecast. I know this is like a really personal thing, so I think it's really cool that you both kind of opened up about this stuff, because it's like,
it meant a lot to me and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and I love having you guys on. Maybe sometime in the future I can get you guys back on, maybe if we wind up with a season 2 of ConverSapien going on, and find out how the ketamine is going.
Yes.
And
sounds good. Thank you, Caleb.
No, thank you both for coming on.
Thank you, and
this
just
has been fun.
Anyone listening is worth it. Learn to love yourself because you're worth learning to love. Be excellent. Be kind to each other.
Be gentle with yourself.
Basically, just live like Keanu Reeves.
Thank you both, really. That's episode 6, my friends of ConverSapien. Thanks for listening. Next week, we will have on a paranormal investigator. She runs a whole team of an all-female paranormal investigative team. So I'm probably going to break out the pitch shifter for the intro next week and be like, welcome to ConverSapien, and nerd out on that. So thanks again for listening, everyone. I'll see you next week. If you are experiencing suicidal thoughts of harming yourself, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org.